Okay, are we ready to start? As I say, I'm sure you want to get away on a Friday afternoon, so my plan is to stay here till 6 o'clock, as I told you earlier. So if we can finish at 10 to 6, we'll be doing well. Everybody doesn't know if I'm joking or not. I am joking. Right, so thank you for your contributions. I hope you've found some useful conversation in the seminar sessions, and we'll take some. I've no doubt we'll hear some feedback, and we've seen already some thoughts that you've had at those seminars, so thank you for that. So this is the final feedback session. We're going to do a couple of things in this. We're going to take some of the questions that you've asked through Slido. We're going to announce the winners of the poster competition, and then we're going to finish. Okay, so the first things first, I think, Kirsty, you're going to announce the winners of the posters, are you?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hello everybody, Kirsty Campbell from Scottish Government. First of all, just to say a huge thank you to everybody who put in posters. There was a massive amount of effort went into it, and judging was not an easy thing to do. It was a really close call, and we were really impressed by the quality of the work that people put forward. So this is my first and ever opportunity to say, and the winner is. So we had two categories. We had the Judges' Choice Award and we had the People's Choice Award. So the winner of the People's Choice Award was Keeping Mums and Babies Together by NHS Tayside. So round of applause to Tayside. Is there anybody here from Tayside who can come up and collect the award? Anyone? Yep. And the winner of the Judges' Choice Award was Understanding Dad by NHS Fife.
Okay, so we're now going to. This is going to be like the NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde's annual review, where all these questions come that we can answer. I'm joking. Right, so we've got some questions that have come through Slido, and we have a panel here, which, does everybody know? Would you want to introduce yourselves, the panel? Because we probably haven't done that before. Okay. So,
I'm Courtney Love. I'm a consultant obstetrician in Lothian, and I am Senior Medical Officer for Maternity and Women's Health in Scottish Government, and I'm one of the Vice Chairs of the Review and Implementation.
And I'm Jackie Lambert. I'm Acting Head of Midwifery for the Argyll part of NHS Highland and Professional Midwifery Advisor at the Scottish Government.
okay.
And I'm Kirsty Campbell, and I'm Head of Maternal and Infant Health at Scottish Government.
Okay, so Beverly, do you have the first question for the panel?
I do. The first question is, what is the timescale for reaching 3 neonatal intensive care units?
Who's going to answer that?
Me? Yeah.
Oh, you can.
You can. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Sol. It wasn't you. Okay. As you know, those of you who are interested in the progress of the Best Start, we announced, or the Cabinet Secretary announced week before last, that we were piloting the new model of neonatal care, and she talked about it in her speech earlier. And those pilot boards that we are calling early implementers are starting their work hopefully fairly soon, and we are expecting them to be some way through their work towards the end of this year. We are imagining that we might be seeing some of the conclusions, some of the emerging findings from that towards the end of this year. And so hopefully we'll be in a position to announce the outcome of the neonatal options appraisal some point after that. I can't put a date on it at the moment, but that's the sort of timescale we're looking at.
Okay, thank you. Beverly?
We've had feedback, very positive steps within transitional care. Do you really have enough capacity to maintain this?
I think the main thing is about anything that we're bringing in Best Start, it's about sustainability. It's not about building things just as a pilot or just so that at the end of the 5 years things stop. This is about building sustainable services, and that is, so nothing's been built just for a short amount of time. It's actually part of the piloting, and part of is to see how to make it sustainable.
Okay, thank you.
We had quite a few questions about the link between health visiting and midwives. So how can we make the transition from midwife to health visitors smoother for women?
Well, if I get stuck, I'll ask John. But but really, I suppose while we're immersed in Best Start and looking at our pathways, also at the same time, the health visitors are also immersed in implementing their pathways, which is, again, not an easy ask, but there's also an awful lot more health visitors being supported by the Scottish Government in training at the moment, so that the whole pathway for health visiting is also changing, so that should enable that relationship to be getting built in the antenatal period. And so when you've got your caseload of 35 women, you've also got a relationship with the health visiting team, and that health visitor is meeting that woman antenatally. Because I think we heard really clearly from the woman earlier about that she had that great continuity, and then there was that transition. So the whole point of having the antenatal input from the health visitor is to try and address that transition point.
What is the plan for invoking continuity of carer for obstetric consultants?
The obstetric continuity of care has been a bit behind the midwifery continuity of care, but it's still something that is very much being addressed by the continuity of care subgroup, and we have a working definition for what that might look like, and that is currently just about to be piloted in the early adopter boards. So it is definitely behind the midwifery continuity of care, but we have a working definition, and really just in the last 2 or 3 weeks, I was just last week at the Scottish Consultants conference where Jane and I spoke, and very positive actually from a number of consultants about taking this work forward, but we are further behind than midwifery.
Within this model, what issues do you perceive when supporting student midwives?
I think the challenging point is at the transition when we've got people working in different ways. But if you look, for example, at Forth Valley, where you've got midwives that have always been working in team systems, where they were going through all areas of practice, and those are midwives that are now working in continuity teams. That works, and it has worked for people in their training, but it's a challenge for the HEI institutes, I suppose, at the moment, is that it's looking at working now with students who are coming through, but also working with the future models. But it's about everybody working together to make sure that everybody's getting the proper mentorship and the support they require.
Yeah, I think something to add there is that one of the work streams of the implementation group is looking at workforce and so on. So there is an opportunity not only to look at the models we're trying to deliver in the pathways, but actually what are the other things we need to do to support staff to be able to do that. Because if we don't do that, then actually the thing will all get out of kilter and we won't be able to do it together. So the part about student midwives is very important actually, as are many other aspects of the workforce, but that's why we've got a work stream specifically looking at workforce and education and so on, so that is given the absolute attention it needs. Sorry.
How are we going to stop burnout amongst midwives? How long can you do a mix of shifts and community, or 3 on-calls a week, and maintain a good work-life balance?
I think that goes for any way of working. It's how do we actually look after ourselves and our colleagues and our teams. It's really important wherever you work now and wherever you work within a continuity model. And that is that if we want to be able to provide good services to our women and to our families, it's about how do we look after ourselves and our teams. It's about not letting the over-enthusiastic person do too much and be doing everything in their own time and an expectation of that. It's about letting yourself have rest time. It's about letting yourself look after yourself and look after your colleagues. A lot of what we've heard today is about those relationships and about the teams that where things are working, it's because there is good relationships and care built within those teams. It's also that ability to be able to make changes, to build your services and to be part of doing that so that you're building a service that works for yourself and your teams. And that's where when you hear that autonomy and that ability to work together. And sometimes that's about trying things and going, no, that didn't quite work. And we've heard a lot of that today. We didn't know exactly the answer, but all of it's based on the relationship between people, good leadership, good collective leadership, and being honest about how much you can do and looking after each other. That goes for whatever model you're working under. And there's midwives here that have done on-call for 20 years that are still working and still loving their jobs, and they look after each other. And it is about, I think this goes, doesn't matter if you're going to be in a core team, if you're in a neonatal team, if you're in a continuity team. That's what we should be building all our services on, looking after each other and caring about each other, and not letting people run too fast, and looking after the people that are going slower. That's how we make it work.
How will continuity be measured to make sure that it's meeting the definition?
Okay. So we are looking at how we will measure and evaluate continuity, and there's a piece of work going on at the moment that was kick-started under the Continuity of Carer subgroup to start to look at how we, well, first of all, start to look at how we define continuity of carer, and then look at how we start to measure that. And there's various different types of measurement that we need to look at. We need to look at how we're measuring that in terms of how we're measuring the delivery of continuity of carer, but also how we're measuring the outcomes and how we're looking at the impact that that makes on staff and on women. So that piece of work is underway, and we have quite a lot of support to roll out that piece of work. I'm expecting that will be available towards the end of the summer, I think is the current timescale, isn't it? Yeah, you're better than me. But we're working with the continuity groups as we do that, so it's being developed in parallel with the continuity of carer work as it evolves.
And final question that we've got from Slido is, will we be able to see evaluation or test of change feedback for informing team development in other board areas? Again, the purpose of setting up the Continuity of Carer group was to be able, all of the early adopter boards are represented on that group, and from the outset we have talked about the fact that we want to be able to capture what's happening, and we want to be able to share that around the NHS so that everybody can learn from the early adopters. That was the purpose of having them, that they are the field leaders, and that we can all start to learn from them. But we also recognise that others are also starting to develop models out in the community. It's not just the early adopters, and so there is quite a wide set of learning we want to be able to capture. We've got a series of things that we're putting in place to try and help facilitate that. This event and events like this are one example of how we can capture and share learning, and I hope lots of people in the room today have had the opportunity to hear things that they might want to go back to their boards and try out and test. We also have mechanisms such as the newsletter. We also have a regular meeting of all of the 14 health boards that the early adopters attend, and all 14 boards are represented there, and that's to get the opportunity for everybody to learn from the early adopter boards and the work that they're doing. We are looking at other mechanisms as well, though, so if people have got any ideas as to how they would find it helpful to learn from others and to learn from the early adopter boards, then we'd always like to hear any new ideas anybody's got. Anything else you wanted to add to that? Have I covered it?
Anything else? No? Okay, so we've got a couple of minutes if there's any burning questions that anybody hasn't had the chance to ask that they want to say, I really want to know the answer to this. And then Kirsty and the team here will answer it, not me. No? Okay. Do you want to just say who you are and where you're from?
Okay. Yeah. My name is Sol. I'm the neonatal consultant. I'm clinical lead in Aberdeen. 2 years passed. What's next? You know, an open question is to see what's next.
Okay. Yeah.
I think 2 years on, reflecting on the journey that we've come on, we've made a huge amount of progress in 2 years, and there's a lot of stuff that's happened in setting up the implementation structures around the Best Start and getting the early adopters started, getting our subgroups underway, and there is stuff now starting to emerge from Best Start, as you heard in the Cabinet Secretary's speech at the beginning and in the video. It doesn't feel to me like our work here is done with the Best Start. I feel like we're still on the journey, and we've still got quite a way to go before we can say that we have implemented all 76 recommendations. But the world doesn't stand still, and we're all aware of that. So continually trying to adapt what we're doing to take account of new evidence and to take account of new guidance as it emerges, I think is just part of the ongoing work that we do. So, I mean, I think the momentum that we've been building over the last 2 years is going to continue to accelerate over the course of the next year, and we're going to start to see more and more, for example, around continuity of care, development of transitional care, around the new model of neonatal care, around the services for families and for parents. And my hope is that if we were back together in another 2 years, we'd be able to reflect on having a huge amount of travelled a huge amount of distance between now and where we are in 2 years' time. I don't know if that answers your question, but
Much to do. Thank you. Okay. Any last one question? Anybody? No? Oh, yeah, over here.
Yvonne Freer, NHS Lothian. I'm quite keen to know about how you're going to measure your progress, your outcomes. We've had 2 years, and as far as I know, there's no national data set saying where are we currently before we start implementing pilot sites to say have we improved or not. So how is the data being gathered to support these changes over time?
So where there is data that exists currently, because there is some data that we do already have. For example, one mechanism that we may be able to collect data through would be the National Neonatal Audit Programme, which our neonatal units across Scotland have been signed up to for 3 years now. So we have got good data coming through in some quarters. We also have centrally, nationally collected data that ISD already collect. So we do have pockets of data that we can draw from, but we also are doing a bit of a landscape map at the moment to look at what that looks like and look at where the gaps are. Some things there won't be any data because it doesn't exist. For example, continuity of care is only now starting to be rolled out and measured, so we are developing those measurement mechanisms as we're rolling it out. But it is a fairly big piece of work to do that measurement and evaluation, and we have got some quite serious academic time looking into this and trying to understand what the best measurement programme will be. And we'll hopefully be able to say a little bit more about that after the summer.
Okay, so thanks very much for that. I think we'll finish on that note. You have feedback questionnaires on your table. If you could leave them on the table, if you could fill them in, that would be really, really helpful to us, so that when we're thinking about our next event, that we are clear what worked and what didn't. So finally from me, I just want to thank a number of people. Thank you to all the presenters who have been here today, given their time, and I think every single talk has been very, very interesting and given certainly me food for thought, and I'm sure you as well. So thank you to everyone who's presented. Thanks to those of you who took the time to make posters. I know it doesn't happen in 2 minutes, so thank you for those of you who've done that. I think all of them were very interesting actually, and are also thank you for doing that. Thank you to the organisers of the event. It's no one ever thanks the organisers until it doesn't go well, and then everybody says what's going on here. So thank you to the team who've put it together. Beverly and colleagues and Kirsty have done a huge amount here to make this go smoothly, so thanks very much for doing that. And also to colleagues in Murrayfield who have made this a smooth event as well. And finally, thanks to all of you for coming. Thank you to your teams for making this a success. We've got much to do, as Kirsty's just said, but your contributions and energy, enthusiasm and innovation is really to be commended. So well done and thank you. And can you keep going, please? Thank you.